Early in our administration, I issued a challenge. Americans in and out of government, I said, should do all we can to defeat the drug menace threatening our country.
Hands up! Contact! Outside! Come on, let's go!
The first thing we did was take down the surrender flag and raise the battle flag. Together we beefed up our enforcement arm, and today more arrests are being made and more narcotics are being seized than ever before.
Back then, marijuana was demonized.
The wacky weed, it is bad. Of this I know, believe your dad. Remember this, it's your decision, but marijuana can lead to prison.
We were told to arrest people, and we did arrest people.
I was arrested for possession one time with two of my friends, and yeah, spent the night there. My personal opinion, I feel like marijuana is a means to lock people up.
The people who are going to jail for this are poor people, often African Americans and often Hispanics, and yet the rich kids who use drugs aren't. I personally think that this is a crime for which the only victim is the individual, and I think that America has to take a different attitude.
I think it's just time for us to have a courageous, grown-up conversation about marijuana.
First time I ever tried marijuana was about 6 years ago, 7 years ago maybe. As far as my experience, my first time trying it, it was a chill experience. I mean, I was in a dorm room, just chilling, and yeah, gave me a euphoric feeling. I don't feel like I'm putting myself in danger when I smoke. I do feel like marijuana can help me cope through stressful situations, and there's definitely been times in life where I went through something that was hard to get through, and marijuana just kind of helped me take my mind off of it and ease the tension for me.
We already have recreational marijuana in the state of Georgia, whether they want to acknowledge it or not, or whether they don't want to do anything about it or not. I can go anywhere in this state, get a hookup within 30, 40 minutes, and it's just not that hard a thing to do. And that includes little old bitty towns like Sullivan, Georgia, or Atlanta itself. As a matter of fact, in 2014, we commissioned a poll through public policy polling, and at that point in time, we knew that 62% of Georgians were in favor of some kind of marijuana law reform. Now we're in a situation where the nationwide polls are coming up, and 66%, 2/3 of the people in the United States, feel like we should reform marijuana laws. Those folks are actually in favor of legalization.
And now recreational pot is legal in California.
It's official!
Yes on 4 supporters celebrating voter approval of recreational marijuana in Massachusetts.
4 states were added to the list of places that allow recreational marijuana use for adults over 21. Here are those states: Arizona, Montana, New Jersey, South Dakota. And if you'll notice there, in most of these states, the margin's pretty substantial.
I do think it's weird how it's legal in certain states, not in, not just the whole country. As far as I'm concerned, if it's going to be legal in some states, it should be legal in all.
I was the first legislator in the state of Georgia to actually introduce both a full medical marijuana similar to what Florida now has. Didn't have that at the time that I introduced it, but that it was based on an Arizona statute. I introduced in 2015 also a bill that would go for a referendum on going to a Colorado-style actual retail system for marijuana. There was huge resistance from the Sheriff's Association, from the DA's Association, and from mostly conservative Republican legislators, like social conservatives on the Republican side, that just simply didn't want anything done because they erroneously believe it's a gateway drug, or they feel that their constituents wouldn't support it. What I was proposing was a full legalization bill, and it never got a hearing, so that was the struggle. And it was almost like you have to ask for everything you could possibly get in order to get something. And so if you look at the result of that, we were able to, each year that we were in the legislature from 15, that I was in the legislature from 15 through 18, we were able to move the ball in terms of first getting a CBD statute passed, then getting a CBD statute expanded. In fact, it was expanded each year. The CBD program was expanded each year that I was in the legislature after that. And then the year after I left, they came up with basically an even broader program where they're actually going to allow growing for the purpose of producing CBD oil. The glass half empty part is that we only got as far as CBD, and it's been very hard to move the needle beyond CBD related issues. And to be honest, CBD, while it may be a great thing for some folks, especially from a medical side, it doesn't treat nearly enough illnesses as could be treated and as it could be used for, as it is used for in states, red states like Arizona and Indiana, or blue states like California, or purple states like Florida.
Being a constitutional officer, I'm sworn by the state of Georgia to uphold whatever laws they are in the code section for Georgia and for the United States. And under the Georgia Code section 1613-3 2B, it says somebody in possession of marijuana will be arrested and brought to jail. If they are found guilty, they can get up to a $1,000 fine or 12 months and or both. I mean, if you commit a crime, you need to do the time. And you know, where you go to court and the judge dismisses it or whatever, that's not my option. My option is only to make sure that the laws in this state and the laws in this land are taken care of.
I was arrested for possession one time. Yeah, me and two friends, we had just got done watching NBA Finals. It was actually like the third time we went to the same spot and did it in the same week. Pulled over in the side of a parking lot, and we had been there about a good 30 minutes. We saw a police car doing rounds in the parking lot right next over to us. And so we were all looking at each other like we didn't know if he saw us or not. And so next thing you know, we see him coming over to us, and he cut his lights on once he saw our car. And we had obviously already been smoking, so he immediately smelled the weed. And first thing he asked us was whose marijuana it was. It was three of us in the car. Nobody said anything. And so once nobody said anything, he went back to his car and came back to us and basically got all of us out. At this point, another cop car pulled up, and he handcuffed us, sat us down on the curb, and searched the car for a good 10 minutes and couldn't find anything. And so we overheard him and the other officer. They were saying that they would probably only be able to get us for loitering and prowling because we were in the parking lot after hours where we shouldn't be. At this point, I mean, yeah, I was really scared, sort of hoping we would get off. It was in my mom's car, so it was just a whole bunch of things going through my head, like, oh my God, my mom's gonna kill me. Then, after 10 minutes passed, they searched the car one last time. The weed was in one of my friend's wallet, and so I guess he went in his wallet, found it, and at this point, still asking us whose it was, none of us said anything, and so they took us all to Gwinnett County Jail.
I didn't start out as an advocate for this starting back in 2003 when I first got elected. It was literally because constituents came to me about that, and because it's not really an area of my law practice. Now, after I introduced it, yes, I had a couple of clients that had marijuana issues come up, and in fact, you know, it shows from a war on drugs standpoint how big a mistake it was. One of the things that I ended up doing as a state senator early in my career, I didn't have to, but I chose to act as sort of both a state senator and a lawyer for someone who had a job with the Park Service, who had a master's degree in forest management and couldn't get a job in the Park Service doing more than picking up trash in the parks because he had a misdemeanor marijuana conviction for having had a joint at a fraternity party at the University of Georgia, which is where he got his degree in forest management and his master's. That's one of the top programs in the country. He was a great student, and that was preventing him from getting a promotion. We had to go to the trouble of getting him a pardon on a misdemeanor marijuana conviction just so he could do his job that he had wanted to do his whole life, that he had sought out an education in. Seeing how those type of convictions actually affect people the rest of their lives, you know, it's an incredible impact for something that 4 out of the last 5 presidents have admitted to doing.
I didn't behave that well when I was younger.
Yeah.
And like I might have smoked some, for example.
I made bad choices. I got high without always thinking about the harm that it could do.
This is like a status offense. In other words, I mean, a great many people do it. And the fact of the matter is that, you know, if someone like me is caught with a joint, they may just throw it away, they may throw it on the ground, they may write me a ticket. If someone like you is caught with the ticket, just being very blunt, you're going to go to jail, okay? Especially given, you know, how policing is done even here in Gwinnett County.
Statistics show that 40% of all kids who smoke marijuana live in the city. Guess where the other 60% live?
We have a situation in our jail where I guess over 60% of the people in the Gwinnett County Jail are in there on misdemeanor, were before they stopped prosecuting, were in there on misdemeanor drug charges, okay, misdemeanor marijuana charges specifically. 80% of that 60% are African American or Latino people of color. That's not because 80% of people that use marijuana are people of color. It's because only 80% of them are getting arrested and taken to jail.
Got to jail. I mean, that was an experience. We had to take our shoestrings out of our shoes, just a bunch of, you know, weird stuff. I had to take my earrings out. Met some interesting people for sure. And yeah, spent the night there. We were having a conversation with this dude. We were talking about Future. And so I think at the time, his newest mixtape that came out, it was like Purple Rain had just came out. And so we asked him what the last Future album we heard was, and it was like an album that came out like 4 years before. So I'm just like, dang, I'm here with some people that's really doing time for some stuff.
I'm going to uphold the marijuana law. If anybody has it found on them, they go into jail. That's the bottom line. You can ask me 100 times. I'm going to uphold the Constitution and the laws of the state of Georgia and the laws of the United States. I'm not going to change my mind about it. The only way I'll change my mind if they send me something from the governor or the president stating you need not to do this anymore, then I'll do it. I won't do it. But until they do, I'm going to uphold the law.
They tell us we don't make the laws, we just enforce the laws. But every time a bill comes up, they're in the legislator's ear. We don't need to do this, we don't need to do this. So in effect, they do make laws, because who do the legislators listen to? The sheriffs or their constituents? Well, they're supposed to be listening to the constituents, okay? But what they're doing here in Georgia is listening to the sheriffs. And, you know, got to say this here, Terry Norris, who runs the Sheriff's Association, the executive vice president, is a good friend of mine, okay? And we meet up there at the Capitol a good bit, and I appreciate Terry, but they're just on the wrong side of this. They really are.
Marijuana is a dangerous drug. It is a gateway drug. It is destroying the lives of children all over this country. So the sheriff's position is a firm position in opposition of these measures.
You and all other school parent groups about the country, and you must stand united on this and stamp out this frightful assassin of our youth. You can do it by bringing about compulsory education on the subject of narcotics in general, the dread marijuana in particular. That is the purpose of this meeting, ladies and gentlemen, to lay the foundation for a nationwide campaign by you to demand by law such compulsory education. Because it is only through enlightenment that this scourge can be wiped out.
They said weed wouldn't lead to harder drugs.
You ready? No.
They lied. Find out the truth about weed. Drugfreeworld.org.
I think it's just time for us to have a courageous, grown-up conversation about marijuana. You have a country in which some states you can use it and some states you don't. And so I think we have to really talk about, you know, what really makes sense in terms of criminality for that. Under Georgia law, marijuana use is still illegal in Georgia. Therefore, the state legislature allows us the opportunity to be able to change local ordinances as it relates to enforcement. So for us, prior to the ordinance, if someone was encountered, they had to go to jail. There was no other options under the code. This was a ordinance change to allow officers the option to use within their discretion if the charge was solely for simple possession of marijuana, that they had the option of citation rather than arrest. We have to look at criminality in our country. And part of the reason that I sought to have this instituted here in the city of Savannah was because the statistics were amazing. That, you know, over a couple of years, we had essentially the same number of arrests for simple possession of marijuana only. But then when you looked at who was being arrested, it was black and brown people. Yet, all the research says that people of all races use marijuana at essentially the same rates. So then what is that? Well, it's partly because of what's called disproportionate minority contact, meaning that the police have more contact with people of black and brown hues than they do with anybody else. So since they have more contact, the incidences of interaction, the incidences of arrests are higher. So then if you have something that disproportionately affects one part of the population more than someone else, then let's look at this a little further. For us, ultimately, when you looked at the police officers, they only had one option. And so this was I think a good faith effort to be able to say, you know what, you have the opportunity to say, you know what, let's build some police community relations. You know, all you have is this joint, you have this roach here, you know what, here I'm taking it into evidence or I'm trashing it, go on about your way, don't do it again. But it provides you an opportunity to do better next time.
We wound up with 12 jurisdictions that have done something like this. So we've got them where there's, some of them have $75 fines, some of them have $150 fines. Statesboro, it's up to a $500 fine. But law enforcement has the option of just writing a ticket and not making an arrest in these jurisdictions. So there again, when we go back to the will of the people, we've got these 12 jurisdictions, some of them major areas. Macon, Bibb, you know, did it last year. But yet the legislature, the people that are making these laws and really not giving us hearings on the 2 decriminalization bills that we have, we're not even getting hearings on them. So they're out of touch with what's going on in the state. They're just absolutely out of touch.
America's about equity, honesty, and basically helping people improve their lives. A great deal of people have marijuana convictions that hold them back from employment, hold them back from getting an apartment, and basically they're incarcerated. So the bill actually would give them a second chance to have a life. And also, the real factor behind the marijuana bill is that it's an anti-crime bill. We have a great deal of people who sell marijuana, and those parties are gangs. They're gang members. You've got to take their money away from them. You've got to take their fuel away. So if we take away the marijuana from the gangs, that breaks the back of the gangs. If you legalize marijuana at a normal rate, because California, they actually did not have it taxed correctly, if you ask me. So you have to tax it just like you would any other food item or item being sold. That way you don't have black marketing in regard to the sale of marijuana. We put an expungement component in regard to equity, that if a person had certain amounts of marijuana, that in the past that their record should be expunged, and those incarcerated now should be freed from jail. So the most important thing about the bill, people have to look at it as an anti-crime bill, but it's also an educational bill. One important facet of the bill is based upon my background. My mother and father, they were both teachers in Gary, Indiana. My dad taught for 35 years. My mom taught for about 32 years. So based upon my experience in education, I've asked for 10% of the money that would be earned from selling marijuana, 10% go to the Hope Scholarship, and try to take care of all expenses that aren't incurred by the Hope Scholarship that students are now indebted by. Because a lot of people think Hope covers everything, but it doesn't. Let's take care of all the expenses a young person would have. That way they're not in debt when they get out. See, it's not a recreational bill. It's a constitutional bill that's fair and equitable to all people. It's an educational bill that adds to society's growth. And it's the most important element, it's an anti-crime bill. That's the most important thing, it's anti-crime.
This is the most American thing I've ever seen in my life. It really is! USA! Like Trump supporters, Antifa, liberals, conservative, Democrats, doesn't matter. We all shared some weed together. We all came together.
The legislature needs to listen to us a little bit more closely, and because at some point in time, this is going to start affecting elections. It really is, because it's a nonpartisan issue. You know, it doesn't matter whether you're a Republican or a Democrat or a Libertarian, okay? If you support marijuana legalization or reform of marijuana laws in some fashion, then you don't much care about what your party is. Or, you know, in other words, if I'm a Libertarian and I got a Republican over here that supports the same thing that I support, then, you know, we're partners.
Hey, Lindsay? I wish you didn't smoke weed. You're not the same when you smoke, and I miss my friend. I'll be outside.
I was on probation for about a year, so I didn't smoke at all for about a year. And then even after that, I just kind of wanted to stay away from it for a minute. So probably didn't pick it up again until about 6 months after I was on probation. So I went a good year and a half without smoking, and then slowly started, you know, smoking again and get more comfortable. I don't smoke in Gwinnett. When I smoke, I live in DeKalb County, so when I smoke, I'm usually at home. I probably wouldn't smoke in Gwinnett still, honestly, just because I know the track record Gwinnett has, and I don't feel comfortable with police officers, regardless of what the laws are.
There are varying views about it. There's varying research about it. We have to agree on an generally accepted view about what the research says about marijuana, about its uses, about impairment, about how it's grown, how it's manufactured, how it's distributed, and then beyond that, what are the true effects on the human body? What's the true effects on the human psyche? What are the true effects on someone's vision or their judgment? And so I think those are the types of things that really there's not enough research out there about. And we can't agree on what that research is. And so for us, I think, again, a grown-up conversation. Let's look at the data for what it is, and let's talk about it. This is the year when people talk about vision, then we have to really talk about looking at the situation from a very clean lens and saying, all right, what are the facts? People are ready for that conversation. We're mature enough for that conversation. And to be frank, if we had those conversations, I think that Black and brown people would feel better about the police departments and the criminal justice system if we had those conversations. Again, if we don't talk about it, if we don't start that dialogue, then we just end up with people on opposing sides of an issue, and we never get anywhere.
When I was doing probation, it definitely did make schoolwork harder for me, and being focused on school was hard for me. And it even made me kind of just consider the image I was portraying to myself, because I do a lot of work with kids who play sports. So it made me think, you know, let's say someone did know I got locked up for marijuana. What would the kids' parents think about me? So it did make me just kind of think about the image I portray, how I portray myself. I don't smoke as much as I used to. I'm definitely a lot smarter about it. I don't do it in public areas. I do it if I'm in a confined space where I know I'll be okay, where I know all my whereabouts, what's going on around me.
83 years years we have been fighting this war against marijuana, and marijuana is winning. Why? You're not gonna stop people from smoking marijuana in this United States. It just ain't gonna happen. And how are you gonna eradicate it? You know, we tried that with kudzu. It didn't work, okay? And it's not gonna work with marijuana either. You know, we've been trying to do this, like I said, for 80 years. When are we gonna learn as law enforcement that we need to take a different look at this?